it for a reference, so I'm going to turn it back on. It is on vibrate, though. Is everybody excited about it almost being Friday? Yeah, almost. Good, me too. I think my battery died. I'll skip that one. So we're going to talk tonight about spiritual Wi-Fi. You want the code right now, or we wait till the end? No? We'll wait, yeah? Obviously, that's a nice title. The broader topic, or the more specific topic, is ask and you shall receive. So what do you think we're going to talk about tonight? Prayer, yeah? That's what we're going to talk about. Everything that we're going to mention tonight is from the Gospel According to Spiritism, chapter 27. Other than the poem I was going to read to you, I can take no credit for the content. Simply was asked to do a talk on this topic. I referred to chapter 27 in its entirety and kind of condensed it into 2 hours worth of slides. Yeah? No, I'm kidding. It's not 2 hours. All right, so let's jump in. What's the Gospel According to Spiritism, and where does it fit into Spiritism as a whole? I'd like to remind people, and some folks that haven't been here very often, is the Gospel According to Spiritism is just one book in a group of 5 books that kind of form the foundation or the codification of Spiritism. There's lots of other books that we read. There's other authors. There's other spirits that provide us wonderful material. But this is the foundation, if you will. And the Gospel According to Spiritism is actually the 3rd book that was published. There's 2 before it and 2 after it. I love the Gospel. My wife and I read it together almost every morning, and we would both tell you that on the days that we miss it because we're hurried or rushed, the rest of the day doesn't go as well. So we try to find 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever we can get in before the kids wake up or before I have to rush out to work, and we spend some time reading from that book. And what it does is it takes the gospel, right, the good news, the New Testament, the teachings of Christ specifically, and in addition to Scripture, if you will, in a traditional sense, it gives us interpretation from spirits dictated to Allan Kardec through mediums from around the world that he put into paper, right, that he put into this book. And it gives us the original language, right, the literal, or the word for word, if you will, and then it takes that and interprets it from a Spiritist perspective. Obviously, when the gospel was written, Christ was already had already left the earth. It was passed on through his apostles, written down in a language, in a context for the people of the time. And as Jesus spoke in parables and spoke in the language of the time, if you will, with what folks could understand and work with, Spiritism kind of takes it to that next level where it details it for generations later that are more evolved as a whole. So that being said, let's talk about one thing that's guaranteed, right? Spiritism, if you think about it, talks about free will quite a bit. It also talks about destiny, right? And how can you have the two, right? How can there be free will, and then how can we have this ultimate destiny? The only thing that we're guaranteed, right, and when we talk about destiny, is each of us, in that first life that we were created by God, are at this bottom left-hand corner, right? Simple and lacking knowledge, right? Imperfect spirits. Ultimately, we as a spirit, right, eternal, evolve life after life, tribulation after tribulation, amending for the past, elevating ourselves morally, ultimately becoming a pure spirit at some point in the future. That is our destiny. That's the law. Yeah, it's going to happen. Everything that's in between, right? The length of time, the issues that we face, the the consequences of our actions or the lack thereof is up to us. It's our free will. Hence, the beauty and the logic of reincarnation, if you will. Each of us on our own journey in this physical life, right, sharing this space, sharing the center, sharing our lives, or each living our individual lives, believe it or not, started in the same way, right? Not in this life, obviously, but in that first life. And we all are at our point in time in a position totally created by the actions we've made in the past. Hence, the reason, although we're all very similar, right, we're all very different, right? And why some of us are facing situations that they're in, I'm facing mine. Some of us seem to have all the luck in the world. Some of us seem to have a gray cloud over our head, yeah? Some of us seem to face harder, more severe hardships than others. Some of us seem just to always hit the lottery, yeah? Not because any one of us is favored more or less by God, but because of the actions that we've taken that got us to where we are today. Does that make sense? Yeah? Awesome. So, how does this tie into spiritual Wi-Fi? Because a big part of this evolution is tied to how we connect, right? To our Creator, to our guardian angel, to positive energy spirits, positive spirits around us, listening to their advice and our intuition, if you will, that's connected to them in a lot of ways. Prayer and faith tied to that is one of the best ways, right, to connect and elevate and get through the tribulation that we've created for ourselves. So let's jump into this. In chapter 27, they talk about characteristics of prayer. And the first thing they tell us is, when you pray, don't do it for show. Yeah? How many of us have seen movies or even people praying? I can remember growing up in the church over the years and being in youth groups and things like that. And there was always that one guy, right? The prayer went forever, and it was like a show more than a mission, if you will. And this reminded me of those situations. What we're instructed to do is don't pray for show, right? Don't pray to impress people. Don't pray to gain praise and accolades. When you pray, they tell us, go into your room, right? Not literally. You don't have to disappear into your room, right? You can pray in your car. You can pray in the bathroom. You can pray right here, right? Sitting by yourself. But do it privately in the sense that it's not to show off. It's not to brag. It's not to impress other people. It's a conversation between you and whoever you're praying to, right? Whether that's God or a spirit or what have you. We'll talk more about that in a bit. So that's the first characteristic. Pretty straightforward, yeah? Awesome. Characteristic number 2, and I think this is, every time I read this, obviously I've read chapter 27 several times over the years and have talked about prayer in the past, but every time I read this, it amazes me because it's so simple, yet it's so hard. How can we connect with God? How can we be at peace if we are holding in our hearts and our minds angst for another human being, right? We're not going to necessarily solve our problem with that person in this one prayer, but if we're frustrated, if we have hatred in our heart or anger or guilt because of a situation with another person, we're instructed to begin that prayer forgiving them, right? So it always strikes me as, man, that's awesome. And yet it's rare that I remember to do that. Obviously, the last few days I've been doing a better job because, I prepared this and it was fresh in my head. But think about that. As you pray, if there's any anger or angst or hurt inside of you towards someone else, whether they've hurt you or you've hurt them, just forgive them. Start your prayer with forgiveness. Characteristic number 3, we're instructed to pray with humility. acknowledging your faults. There's an example in chapter 27 where an elite class of people at the time, a person that is considered a leader, wealthy, elevated socially, where he's praying, and his prayer starts off by, God, I'm this, I'm that, I follow the commandments, I give 10% of everything I earn. I do so much more than, and he was sitting next to a tax collector, I believe. So he was comparing himself, how being elevated and not being like the tax collector. And because of that, Father, you should grant me this. So when we pray, we're instructed to be humble. Don't praise yourself, and pray with humility, not pride. Acknowledge your faults, if you will. Acknowledge things you need to work on. Don't beat your chest, right? And then characteristic number 4 is don't pray just to pray, because you're supposed to. I can remember as a kid learning all kinds of prayers, in Sunday school, and beads and different traditions. And that's fine, right? We're not condemning that. But I can sincerely tell you that all those prayers that I did after confession, all those Hail Marys, all those acts of contritions and things like that, it was simply from memory. It was rote, where I just, I got to do really bad week, 100 Hail Marys or something, Good week was maybe 5 or 6, right? But you just said them because you were told to say them, and to me it didn't have meaning. I was just praying to pray. And specifically tell us, it's not the number of words or the minutes or the length of our prayer that means anything. It's completely your sincerity, how you feel and what you're saying, and from your heart, from your feelings. And the more sincere your prayer, the more heartfelt your prayer, the more meaningful it is. Whether it takes you 30 seconds or it's 30 minutes, it's not the length; it's the sincerity. And that should be our goal: is praying from the heart. I have 3 little girls, and it's common for me to be the one that puts them down at night and say prayers with them. Some days I'm tired and I just say a prayer and they go to sleep. Other days I remember, hey, they're supposed to be learning how to pray. So I still pray, but I go after them. And it's so cute to see as they get older how they're picking up on this and being more sincere. It's very cool. So if they can learn, right, I'm sure we can all learn to be more sincere when we pray. All right, so to summarize that first section, right, pray from your heart. Pray with humility, not your pride. And we didn't talk a lot about examining your defects. It doesn't mean you have to list everything that you don't like about yourself or everything you've ever done that you don't like. We're not telling you to redig the hole or open up the wounds. But in your life today, whatever challenges you're trying to overcome, focus on that, not necessarily your successes. Focus on things that you're working on, things you're asking to improve, things that you want to help with, without bragging or beating your chest, like we said. And most importantly, or just as important, I should say, is don't compare yourself with others. Examine yourself. Examine your situation. Don't compare with others. It's about you and your relationship with God, and developing yourself morally. All right, so now that we know the characteristics of prayer, let's talk about the effectiveness of prayer. And there's actually studies on prayer. There's actually studies on spiritual beliefs and things like that. There is some science, a book of knowledge that's evolving little by little. So at some point, I think we'll be able to see scientific evidence, on this. But more importantly for our topic tonight is what we're being told by elevated spirits, right? Is prayer works if you believe, right? If you pray with sincerity, for whatever you want, right, you're going to get what you need. I think there's a song, right, about that. You get what you need, right? Now, did I just say that whatever you pray for, you're going to get? No. But you are going to get what you need. If you believe in your heart and you pray with sincerity, your prayers will be heard and they will be answered. Not on your timeline, not necessarily with what you perceive is what you need at the time, but you will get what you need. I can remember very earlier in life, I should say, probably 22, 23 years ago, I know this is going to sound hard to believe, but somebody left me. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Nice guy like me. I was devastated, okay? I think I was a mess for a couple of years. I prayed, God, bring her back to me. God, why? It was rough. It was bad. I prayed and I prayed, right? Then many years later, I meet Christiane. Man, did I hit the jackpot, right? Wasn't what I prayed for at the time, but it's what I needed. And it was answered sometime later. So I always think of that. Thank God, there's a country song, what is it, Garth Brooks? He says, thank God for unanswered prayers. So you might be thinking and praying for what you think you want and what you need, but it may not be what you really need. So yeah, thank God for unanswered prayers at the time. So you're not going to get the winning lottery numbers, right, just because you pray for them. You're not going to get that promotion just because you prayed for it. And whatever struggle you're facing, just because you pray to end it, doesn't mean it's going to end right then and there. But you stay strong, you have faith, you pray for resolution, you pray for answers. They will come to you, right?
That's the comprehend part of
the comprehend part, yeah, exactly. It did tie in, didn't it? Absolutely. So no, we're not going to get those things answered, everything, right? It's not going to get always what we want because it's illogical, they tell us. And because we're told that a lot of us, myself included, only see the present, the right now. My heart's broken. I lost my job. My car's in the shop. My roof leaks. I've been praying for a new roof for like a year and a half. Finally, the insurance company said, all right, we're going to get you a new roof. And that's going to take another 6 months probably. But anyways, my point is, we oftentimes think of the present situation. But if you think about it, whatever affliction or suffering or tribulation we're going through today has been developing over time, lifetimes, years, weeks, right? It all builds up. Little things go on and on. So whatever we're going through, think about this life, right? Before you reincarnated, before we reincarnated in the spirit world, we developed a plan, right? With the assistance of our mentors, right? By the grace of God, we were given another life. And that plan, thankfully, I think, we don't remember it, but we came here on a mission. We came here with a set of goals and objectives to grow and evolve. And we determined some pretty big things, probably, right? Health, major relationships, geographical, socioeconomic challenges for ourselves. And we're living that plan, right? So whatever we're facing, we've created, and it's here for us to work on. So if we could just all of a sudden make it go away just because we prayed, right? We didn't do the work necessarily, right? So they tell us the things that we're going through are critical for our growth. And we have to face them and we have to work through them. If they were just taken away, there would be less merit, if you will, because we've got to correct and amend for the faults of the past. So they remind us right after this in chapter 27 is you can guarantee, right, that God's always going to grant these three things. If you ask with trust and with faith, whatever the thing is, whatever your problem is, and you can pray for resolving that, to get through that, right? And if you have belief that it's going to work out, what you're going to get is more courage to face your current pain. You're going to develop patience with the situation that you can't necessarily fix right then and there. And you're going to resign yourself that it's out of your hands, in the sense that you've got to go through the issues to evolve, to elevate. So through prayer, you acquire these things for sure. If you pray with trust and faith. How often do we pray or ask for things, and in the back of our head our fingers are crossed, man, I hope this happens, right? Or you're in a situation that you know you've created, and it's painful, and it's difficult, and you say, this is never going to get better. I'm never going to get through this. If we're doing and saying those things, we're not resigning ourselves that everything's going to be okay. We're not accepting the fact that with patience and courage, that the door is going to open, that
something is wrong.
Our suffering will alleviate through our work and by our actions.
Something stopped.
So find yourself, if you can, imagine yourself praying not so much for that immediate resolution, but praying for courage, for patience, for resignation. It sounds very easy to stand up here and say that, but in the heat of the moment, it's very hard, I think. But we have to let go and think more about these things and trust that these things will be delivered. All right. So God will also grant the means to extricate ourselves from our difficulties. In other words, we can get ourselves out. We created these situations, and we can get ourselves out of them with patience, courage, and resignation, right? God helps those who help themselves, right? There's a common saying, right? Heaven helps those who help themselves, right? We hear that all the time. Then they're instructing us, or telling us, right? Trust your intuition. You guys ever get that feeling in the pit of your stomach or in your heart? It's like, man, I should really do this. I shouldn't do this. That's your intuition, right? And that is guidance, that's advice from your guardian angel, from good spirits, that are there to help you, always there for you, if you ask, if you let yourself receive it. I like to think of it, a lot of people pray and they thank God for their blessings, or that they're blessed. And I really am convinced that none of us are more blessed than others, right? We all have access to the same positive energy. We all have access to the same guidance and direction. We simply have to calm down, listen, ask, and let yourself receive that intuition from higher spirits that are there to help you. Because, as they tell us, we're surrounded constantly, right, by good spirits, sending aid. But they remind us they can't do the work. All they can do is give you some tips and some pointers and lead you a little bit with ideas. But they cannot do the work. You have to get up and do the work. In other words, we have to help ourselves. There's a story in chapter 27 about a man lost in the desert, wandering for days. He's out of water, he's out of food, and he collapses in the sand, laying there. Now he's going to die. Then he has this thought. He says, man, I should try one more time. I'm going to get up and I'm going to try. And I'm going to go to the right. And he goes over the ridge, and there it is. There's an oasis. There's palm trees, and there's water. He gets to the water, and he says to himself, man, wasn't I smart? Isn't it my lucky day? I found water. I'm going to live. Right? That's one way to look at it. The story continues that with humility, with faith in God, that the better way to look at that, right? He had this idea to get up and try one more time. So the recommendation there is, in those situations, be humble and thank God, right, for that intuition. Thank God for that energy, that message, that you listened to it and you got to the water. Does that make sense? All right. The other story that's in chapter 27, at around this point, it's about how we have to help ourselves, right? Making use of our own strength, regardless of the unknown outcome, right? And the tribulation that we're facing. We've got to get up and we've got to work. and that God puts to the test our trust and submission in the divine will. And they tell a story about a baby, right? Remember babies, imagine a baby that's crawling, and they're starting to learn how to walk, and they pull themselves up. What happens when they fall? What do they usually do? They cry, right? They cry. And they hope mommy's going to come or daddy's going to come, pick them up, right, and help them. If nobody's in the room, or mommy and daddy don't run to them, what does the baby usually do? Stops crying and what? Tries to get up again, right? They use their own strength and they build their abilities on their own. If no one's there to automatically pick them up and move them along. So feel like a baby, yeah? It's okay, cry for a little bit, and then get back up and go to work. Because without doing the work, this doesn't happen quickly. It's very slow, which I'm living proof of. All right, so the action of prayer. We've talked about the characteristics. We've talked about the effectiveness. Now, what is the action of prayer? And we talked about the title, right? Wi-Fi, right? Wi-Fi is a signal that goes out into space, right? And it delivers, connects things that communicate. And in a very simple way, all prayer is a transmission of thought. It's my feelings from my heart, from my mind, going out into the universe. Maybe I'm praying to God, maybe I'm praying to others. But it's nothing more than an invocation. I'm connecting with whoever I'm praying to. And it's simply through thought to whoever it is. And this could be to praying for myself, right? Praying for strength, praying for courage, praying for the winning lottery numbers, whatever I want to pray for, right? Remember, I'm only going to get what I need. I'm not going to get everything I want. But we can pray for ourselves, right? We can pray for somebody else, right? Our mom's sick, or our best friend is unemployed, or the soldiers, in the Middle East, or the homeless guy on the corner when we're coming to the center. Pray for someone else. Pray for the living or for the dead. We've got 2 books in the back of the room, right? For discarnated and incarnated, right? Where we can write the names of people that we're praying for, people we're hoping to get some assistance. And we can do that in the book. We can do that at home. Any one of these scenarios are legitimate and good reasons to pray. They tell us that through prayer, we're calling to ourselves a host of good spirits. And I'd like to... I've got some bad habits that I won't bore you with, right? I make bad choices. I know it's hard to believe, right? I make bad choices every day. Less and less, right, as I study more and what have you. But I'm still challenged with a few things. And I experiment. I shouldn't say experiment. I actually work sometimes, right? I actually put this stuff to practice. And what I find is when I'm about to make a decision to take action that's not necessarily the best for me, right? If I stop and I pray, say, God, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why am I going to go buy that stuff that I don't really need? Right? Why am I going to do this? Why am I going to do that? And I pray, say, God, let me turn the car the other way. I don't need to do this. It works, right? It works. I'm not giving into my vice. I'm not giving into my passions. I'm not giving into instinct. I'm resigning myself to the fact I need help. And I'm asking my Father, my Creator, for help. And sure enough, I don't do the thing I was going to do. It's amazing. It works all the time if I do it. Got to do it, right? Got to do the work. Because when we do that, when we pray, God himself doesn't necessarily reach a hand out and lift me up. But I call to myself a host of good spirits working on God's behalf to assist me. You know how we get passes, right, after these talks? Imagine you asking for help, being surrounded by your guardian angel, other positive spirits, assisting you from the other side. Imagine that. And when you call to them, when you ask for help, they're there. It's very cool. And it works for me 100% of the time, if I do it. Because they lift us up. So when we are about to fall morally, or when we do fall morally, we simply need to ask for help. Ask for help, open our hearts, and do the work. Try to improve. Try. We have to try. Just like the baby that falls. We got to get back up. Because it's there for us 100% of the time. May not always seem like it, may not always feel it, but I know from my own history that when I do that, I go the other way. I don't make the same mistakes that I was about to make. Does that sound hard or does it sound simple? Simple. Sounds simple. Is it simple, though? I think you're right. I think you're right. You have to make a habit, yeah? Yes. You're right. It's simple. It's not hard. Thank you. Because if I keep telling myself it's hard, it's always going to be hard. It's simple. Thank you. All right. So I want you to think about, I want you to make two piles in your mind, okay? I want you to put every problem that you can't avoid. Earthquakes, somebody attacking you perhaps, what else? Your company goes bankrupt, the company has to lay you off, the government gets shut down and you can't go to work, right? That would never happen in America, right? But it does, right? Things that are out of your control. And put that in one pile, right? Over here. Now, I want you to think about another pile over here on this side of all the problems created by yourself through carelessness and excess. Which pile is bigger? What do you think? Exactly. All right, the one you created. All right? This one we can't control, Mother Nature and, things like that. It's pretty small. But man, our ego and our pride can build a big pile, yeah? The second one for sure they tell us. They go on to tell us that we are the authors or the creators of most of our affliction. All right? We, because of our ego and our pride, create all kinds of problems. When we put ourselves first, when we try to advance at the cost of others, when we make ourselves feel good while hurting others, or neglecting, not even intentionally trying to hurt others, just neglecting. We create most of our problems because of that. So they instruct us that, look, if you would just act with wisdom and prudence, you could turn most of this around. So wisdom and prudence, right? Pray, hear the intuition, follow the wisdom of advanced spirits, good spirits, and you'll turn most of this around. Won't be overnight, but we can correct a lot of this stuff if we get away from ego and pride. What do we call this in simple terms? Making mistakes, amending them. I think there's two words we talk a lot about here, right? It's called cause and effect, right? Whatever actions we take or don't take creates a ripple effect, right? A future consequence. We're living today the consequences of choices that we made or didn't make in yesterday, a month ago, 20 years ago, 3 lifetimes ago. Everything we're experiencing right now is a result of our past, right? It goes all the way back to when we were created. We're living the effect. We don't always know the cause. We don't always appreciate the effect, but it's all tied together. Anything, major health conditions, distress, bad relationships, financial situations, we created it. And we're working through the tribulation that initiated with our actions. And in the moment, think about, don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, but think about a low point in your life, okay? In that moment, the choices that you made kind of define you at that moment, right? I think that at our most difficult moment in life is when we truly define ourselves at that moment in time. It's not permanent, it's not fixed. You have the ability to create a new reality. But every time you get faced with a challenge that seems insurmountable, right, where you just want to say, man, God, take me away. Is this ever going to end? And if you're ever in those situations, just remember, have faith, pray, And you will develop that courage, that resignation, and that patience. Patience for the situation, understanding that you created it. Courage to face it upright and morally. Right? And resignation that it's out of your hands at the moment, in the sense of you can't change it instantly. You created it over time, and it's going to take time to get through it. Just resign yourself that it will solve itself. It's just going to take work. Make sense? All right, everybody know this guy? Yeah, Benjamin Franklin. What's he tell us? He says, work as if you were going to live 100 years. Pray as if you were going to die tomorrow, right? I like that. Work as if you're going to live 100 years, right? You got plenty of time to work, but pray like you're going to die. Because I guarantee you, if I know I'm going to die in 5 minutes, I'm going to pray a lot harder and a lot more sincerity probably than I might do today. But this is so true, right? You don't have to pray for hours. You don't have to pray constantly. You don't have to pray 10 times a day. Pray when you're called to pray. Pray when you need help. Pray when you're challenged. Pray when you're about to do something that you know you shouldn't do. And pray like you're going to die, like your life depends on it. Talk about coming from your heart, talking about sincerity. Right? It works. I've tested it. And I'm no scientist, but I have tested it. And I just know it works. I just got to make it more of a habit. I think we could all benefit from making it more of a habit. So thank you, Ben Franklin. So we're reminded, to wrap up here, that the power of prayer is in the thought. It's not to the words. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter what time it is. None of that matters. It's the thought. It's the sincerity. And there's never a wrong time or a bad place to pray. Right? Anytime, any place, alone or in a group. And then finally, I'll leave you with the words of St. Augustine. Prayer is a divine mist that destroys the highest heat of the passions. It leads us to the pathway that takes us to God. Beautiful. So whenever you feel that your passions are taking over, when you feel that you're getting off track, just think about it. When I read this, it makes me think of a fire, right? A divine mist or a spray of water putting out the flames, right? Simply take the time right then and there to pray, asking for help. And it'll put you back into the light, back on the pathway that takes us to God. So I will leave you with that. I thank you for the opportunity to prepare this and for your attention tonight. Thank you.